Iran is keeping the world guessing over the status of the Strait of Hormuz, a critical artery for global oil shipments. Is the Strait of Hormuz truly reopened, or are conflicting reports masking a more complicated reality on the ground? Washington insists that maritime passage has resumed, but is Iran's navy still restricting and halting traffic at sea despite those claims? And on camera, did US War Secretary Pete Hegseth lose his composure when pressed over Iran's continued attacks and the uncertainty surrounding the strait? Iran reopened the Strait of Hormuz within 24 hours of agreeing to a ceasefire with the United States and Israel. Two commercial vessels, including one owned by a Greek company and another sailing under Liberian flag, were reportedly permitted to transit the passage. Data from maritime tracking platform Marine Traffic indicated that both ships successfully crossed through the Strait of Hormuz. However, developments suggest that Iran's naval forces continue to maintain strict control over movement within the strategic waterway. Reports indicate that Iranian naval units have issued warnings to vessels attempting to pass through the strait without prior authorization. Iran has also warned that any ship entering the Strait of Hormuz without clearance could face direct military action, according to the Times of Israel. Statements attributed to the Iranian Navy suggest that vessels attempting unauthorized transit may be intercepted and potentially destroyed. At the same time, Iran has indicated it could reconsider its ceasefire agreement with the United States over developments in Lebanon. Tehran has stated that it may withdraw from the ceasefire if Israeli operations in Lebanon continue, according to Tasnim News. Iran has also accused Israel of breaching the agreement through repeated strikes conducted inside Lebanese territory. Under the ceasefire agreement with Washington, Iran had reportedly agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz for maritime traffic. However, subsequent reports suggested that access to the strait would be regulated and implemented in a limited manner. An Iranian official told Reuters that full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz could instead take place on April 9th. On April 8th, US War Secretary Pete Hegseth stated during a Pentagon briefing that the strait was effectively open. Hegseth said that the agreement ensured that maritime transit through the Strait of Hormuz would resume under the terms discussed. However, the US defense chief appeared visibly annoyed when questioned about Iran's continued military activities despite the ceasefire.
Iran has said that safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible in coordination with Iran's armed forces and, quote, technical limitations. What do you believe that means? And then we've also heard reports that Iran has continued striking targets well into this morning. At what point are we beyond a grace period? Are we giving them a grace period? Is there a miscommunication there? What's going on with that?
What we know is that Iran is going to say a lot of things. A lot of people are going to say a lot of things, claim a lot of things. What has been agreed to, what's been stated, is the strait is open. Our military is watching. I'm sure their military is watching, but commerce will flow. And that's what you saw the markets react to, is that reality. As far as shooting, that we were monitoring it last night in real time. Of course we are. Iran would be wise to find a way to get the carrier pigeon to their troops out in remote locations to know not to shoot any longer one-way attacks or missiles, because it takes time sometimes for ceasefires to take hold. We're watching it. We're prepared if necessary, but we hope and believe that it'll hold. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Why are you so rude? Just wait. I'm calling on people.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Yesterday in the President's Truth Social, he threatened to wipe out a civilization. That statement elicited a huge response in America. If Iran did not come to the table and make a deal yesterday by the deadline, was the president really prepared to wipe out Iran entirely?
Like I said, we had a target set, locked and loaded, of infrastructure, bridges, power plants. Remember, this is a terror regime. The military regime used all of these things for dual use to fund their military, to fund their terror campaigns. We had a lot of legitimate targets. They knew exactly the scope of what we were capable of.
Iran will reportedly charge transit fee from ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Reports say Trump's two-week ceasefire framework would allow both Iran and Oman to levy those fees. The claim was attributed to a regional official and was reported by the Times of Israel on April 8th. According to that reporting, Iran plans to use the money it raises for reconstruction. The Strait of Hormuz lies within the territorial waters of both Iran and Oman. Before the war, the strait was generally treated as an international waterway where no tolls were charged. The route handles about 1/5 of the world's oil supply and also carries other essential goods, including fertilizers.
Earlier on the evening of April 7th, President Donald Trump had confirmed that a ceasefire had been agreed after more than a month of intense war with Iran. Trump announced a suspension of planned new bombing of Iran once a self-imposed deadline for that same day was reached, framing it as a step toward de-escalation. In response, Iran stated that if attacks against it stopped, it would cease defensive operations, indicating a conditional willingness to halt its own strikes. Trump stressed that the truce was contingent on Iran completely, immediately, safely reopening the Strait of Hormuz, tying the pause in fighting to restore global shipping through the key choke point. Tehran said that for the 2-week period, shipping through the Strait of Hormuz would be possible via coordination with its military, signaling that it intended to keep tight control but allow limited passage. Trump said Iran's 10-point proposal was a workable basis on which to negotiate, describing it as a serious framework for moving toward a broader settlement. He added that almost all of the various points of contention had been agreed between the US and Iran, arguing that only a few outstanding issues remained. According to Trump, the 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated, portraying the ceasefire as a window to lock in a more durable deal. For its part, Iran said its decision was based on a US request to negotiate on a broader 15-point proposal. Iran also emphasized that Washington had accepted Tehran's 10-point draft as a framework for discussions.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.